40 to 50% of kids who are connected to a youth group in high school fail to stick with their faith after graduation. And only 20% of college students who leave the faith actually plan to do so while they were still in high school, meaning that 80% of college students thought they were going to continue in their faith. And whether you're a parent, a youth worker, or a mentor, these statistics should alarm you. So how do we disciple and lead our teenagers through adolescence and prepare them for life after graduation? Sticky Faith aims to answer that question and also give the right tools to parents and to leaders. Hey, I'm Nathan. I'm a family pastor and a Christ follower, and this is Productive Pastors, a channel that is dedicated to serving those who serve the church. Sticky Faith, as defined by the authors, is both internal and external, personal and communal, and mature and also maturing. An internal and external faith means that a student's inner thoughts and feelings reflect their faith in Christ. And they externally present themselves through behaviors like praying, reading the Bible, and regularly attending a church service, as well as a lower participation in risk behaviors such as drinking, sex, and drugs. A faith that is both personal and communal is a faith that is centered around the personal relationship with Jesus Christ, but one that is always placed within the context of the local and the global church. And a faith that is both mature and maturing is one that shows marks of spiritual maturity, but one that also recognizes that all of us are in the process of becoming more like Christ, and that is a lifelong journey. In one of the early chapters of the book, Powell asks the question, how do you define the gospel? And she would ask this in a room full of pastors and leaders and Christians, and even there, she would get varying answers. If the gospel were easy to define, then it wouldn't be God-sized. Even in these varying responses of what the gospel was to different people, trusting Jesus was always a foundational element in defining the gospel. As we think about teaching and leading students, there's a temptation to preach a gospel of sin management because we want the fullness of life that Christ has to offer. But our job as parents and ministry leaders is to help teenagers learn how to trust in Jesus. In every action and decision that they have to make, we can ask them, how are you placing your trust in Jesus in this decision? And when it comes to those external disciplines like praying and reading the Bible, we've got to teach our students that those don't make them righteous, but they just put them in a place where they can trust in Jesus more and more every day. The gospel of trust is big enough to handle sin. A lot of the times, these teachable moments of trusting in Jesus happen in the informal spaces. Places like car rides or greeting times in ministry, or maybe even the transitional times in between events and activities. It's in these moments, rather than the formal teaching and discipling moments, where learning how to trust in Jesus is more caught than it is taught. Teaching our teenagers the gospel means teaching them to trust in Jesus in practical and applicable ways, and through the example of our own practicing and trusting in Jesus. Not only are students wrestling with the definition of the gospel, they're also wrestling with their identities, who they are. Many of your ministry's adolescents maintain membership in several different peer crowds, allowing for inconsistent feedback as their identities form. A student who drops the F-bomb during football practice will receive a different reaction than if he did it during a church prayer retreat. Different contexts, different people, different responses. Students experience these different responses from their varying peer groups, and it makes it really hard to form and solidify their identity because they're constantly getting conflicting responses about what they say and how they act. So when your student is bouncing from maturity in one area to immaturity in another, oftentimes involving conflicting or confusing or inconsistent behavior, they're actually in the process of forming who they are by solidifying their identity. There's two things that we can do as parents and youth leaders to help our teenagers discover a sticky identity? Number one, we must realize that every single student is more than the sum of his or her abilities, gifts, or personality traits. At the heart of every teenager is a beloved child of God. And learning this is a lifelong process. And if we're honest with each other, it's one that we might still struggle with ourselves at times. Number two, we can help our teenagers discover their spark. The Search Institute labels a spark as a passionate interest that gives life meaning, focus, energy, and joy. And when we truly see and know our teenagers, then we can begin to notice these sparks in their life, and we can encourage them in those things, as well as networking them with other adults who share a similar spark, who can help teach and mentor them along the way. This is a great reminder that sticky faith occurs within the larger context of the local and the global church community. When our teenagers have relationships with a variety of different adults, then they're able to see how God uniquely works in each life, as well as practice and develop skills that we may not be able to teach them. And so as a result, they're able to decide, who do I want to be? And they can do that in the context of Christian relationships with people who genuinely care and love them, as well as care for their souls. If you couldn't tell, family and ministry are two of my biggest passions, two of my sparks. So if you like what you're hearing in this video, I am sure that there will be more content like this in the future. Subscribe and ring the bell to be notified when new videos come out. And if you would, like the video too. It would really help me out on my path to 1,000 subscribers. Faith that is modeled to teenagers by their parents is the most important influence in a student's faith journey. When it comes to kids' faith, parents get what they are. As a parent of a newborn, I know, I have a lot left to experience in this journey of parenting, but stick with me for just a second. As a new parent, if I'm really honest, this quote kind of scares me. There may be times where I don't want my kids' faith to look like mine. In the times when I have struggled and doubted and failed, it's difficult to share that. But it is exactly in that moment that it is so important for parents to share their faith with their teenagers. Our students need to hear that sticky faith is about faith that is maturing. And oftentimes, maturity comes through struggles and it comes through difficulties. And our first reaction may be to want to hide those things or shelter our kids from those difficult things that we're going through. But when we choose to do that, we're removing the possibility that our teenagers will be able to see what God is doing in us through those difficult circumstances. In hiding the pain, we're also hiding the blessing. The most important sticky faith communication advice you can give parents is this: never explain something to your kid if you can ask a question instead. Look, I'm sure you don't have to think long to remember a time where you were talking to a teenager and they just had this glazed look over their eyes, completely daydreaming about something else, or maybe just thinking about food and what they were about to eat. As we share our lives and our faith as parents and youth leaders, ask questions to our teenagers, get them involved and spur on their own thoughts and beliefs about what God is doing in their lives and about faith topics that we may bring up from our story. If you're going through a difficult season at work, maybe ask your teenager what they would do in that situation and how they would respond in a Christ-like manner to their boss or their coworkers. Or maybe when your teenager comes home from school and shares a story about a friend they have who's questioning their sexual identity, ask them questions like, "What do you think about that?" And be quick to listen and slow to speak. And along the way, point them back to Jesus by asking, "How do you think Jesus would love your friend in this situation?" When you're able to include and engage your teenager in conversations and difficult questions about life, instead of just talking at them, then they will better understand what it means to have a sticky faith, because they'll have a safe place in which they can discuss and process what does it look like to follow Jesus. Far more important than twisting kids' arms to get them to darken the door at church is to make sure parents know that whatever door students may crash through in their personal and spiritual lives, their parents love them and are there for them, no matter what. The same unconditional love of God that sticks with us is what we want parents and youth leaders to lavish on students. Even our best words still might lead to kids struggling with their faith. It is most important then that our love and our actions toward teenagers model the same love that God has given us. Just as Jesus runs with open arms to the prodigal, we have to welcome our students into our arms when the weight of life bears down. Teaching, including our students in and modeling an honest relationship with Jesus leads to sticky faith. There is so much more to offer in Sticky Faith, and there's even a version of the book that is specifically written for youth workers. I can't recommend this book enough, and I'm sure if you pick up your own copy that it will challenge you as you learn to better lead and love the teenagers in your life. If you're interested in buying your own copy, there's a link in the description down below. It is an affiliate link, which means at no extra cost to you, Amazon gives me a little bit of a kickback to help me with taking care of my family. You can also check out productivepastors.com, link in the description as well. And there you can find more information on Sticky Faith, as well as looking at some of the other books that I recommend. And if you're a pastor, a parent, or a ministry leader, and you have found this video helpful at all, then leave a comment for me. I'd love to hear from you guys and encourage you all on the difficult journey of loving teenagers. See y'all, and God bless.